Hey everyone, my name is Katie O'Shea, and today I'm going to do a bit of a wrap-up video. Not a monthly wrap-up, since I haven't wrapped up any of the months this year so far, so we'll just go ahead and wrap up January through April in terms of what I have read. You know, better late than never. So the first book that I read this year, which I really finished at the beginning of the year, January 1st, was Gone Girl. And I enjoyed that. It was not what I thought it was going to be. I was definitely late to the Gone Girl party, but I do like that kind of genre and kind of the mystery. Thought the movie was a bit strange. And I don't know, I kind of found the main character, unlikable, which I guess other people did too. Kind of the point. So, yeah, I don't know. That wasn't my favorite one I've read. I kind of thought it would be different based on all the hype, but, you know, it was what it was. It was interesting. So, the second book I read this year was Emma by Jane Austen. You guys know I love Jane Austen, and I finished this on February 3rd. And while I did not like it as much as Pride and Prejudice, I did enjoy it. I thought that the ending kind of really pulled everything together for me. I found that some parts of the beginning through the middle were a bit slow, but of course the ending kind of made everything clear, and yeah, I thought that the ending was just perfect, and I really liked how Emma was essentially trying to give everyone else matchmaking advice, and she was doling out all the advice, and really she was not the best person to take advice from. Harriet needed to just stay in her lane, honestly, because when she was coming for Knightley, I was like, whoa, step back, girl. No. Come on. So that was, I enjoyed it. I ended up giving it a 5-star rating on Goodreads, but I will say that it got a little slow in the middle there. And then I did watch the movie that has Gwyneth Paltrow in it, on Netflix or something afterwards. I kind of did like it. I only kind of half-watched because I was doing something else at the time, but I don't know, I think that I do really enjoy the story of Emma, and so it was kind of a fun little movie, and I had been waiting to watch it until after I read the book. The third book that I read this year was Jane Eyre, and I finished that on March 9th, and I appear to have given it a 4-star rating, so I guess I didn't dislike it that much, though I generally never rate anything too low. I have to say, thinking back on it now, it wasn't really my favorite. I know maybe that will shock you Jane Eyre fans, but Mr. Rochester, I was not super into, and I kind of didn't get the whole Jane Eyre liking Mr. Rochester thing, because he was kind of like a jerk the whole time. I don't know. You can disagree with me, and I would love to hear your opinions on that. But I didn't kind of find any redeeming qualities in him. I don't know, Mr. Darcy, Pride and Prejudice or something. Kind of starts off cold, but then you kind of grow to like him. I guess I just never really grew to like Mr. Rochester. And so that was kind of my problem with it, and I kind of didn't get what Jane Eyre was seeing in him, and so I was kind of just confused, and I was like, Jane, just no, ooh. So that was kind of my take on Jane Eyre. I mean, it was an interesting story, and I'm glad I read it, but yeah, that's kind of where I stand on Jane Eyre at this point in time. Maybe I'll read it later and reevaluate, but that was my take. The next book I read, and I should have mentioned that I pretty much listened to anything that was a classic, all the ones except for Gone Girl, I listened to on audiobook from LibriVox. I will have a link to them. It's basically free audiobooks for classics, things that are in the public domain, and they have an app, and they also have the audiobooks as podcasts on iTunes, so you can listen to those for free while you drive. And basically I was just I don't want to pay for an Audible subscription while I commute, so let me listen to free classics. So hooray. So the next one I listened to was The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. That was a weird book, I will say that. So essentially, he wakes up one day and he's turned into do we want to say like a beetle? Like an insect? Okay, the description says a gigantic insect. And yeah, it's kind of just how, it was an interesting story about kind of how his relationship with his family changed, and I don't know, it was very interesting, I will say that, because it was kind of sad how he was kind of providing for his family the whole time when, maybe his father couldn't work and etc. And then once he was not able to work, kind of how his family turned on him and saw him as disgusting now that he was this insect. And I'm sure that there's a very deep, like, psychological analysis you could go into, but I will leave that to someone else. The next book I listened to was Around the World in 80 Days, so you can see I was just on the classic kick here, and I finished that March 18th, and I gave that one a 5-star rating. I really enjoyed that. If you have not read that book, I would highly recommend it. It was really, really interesting because, essentially, if you don't know the premise, he makes a bet that he can go travel around the world in 80 days. And they're like, oh, no, you can't do that. That's crazy. So it's kind of interesting to compare that to now, where you can just get on a plane and fly somewhere. Like, you can probably fly around the world in, what, like 24 hours? I don't know how, like, quickly it can be done, actually. I'm sure that, like, the president can get on that Air Force One and go a lot quicker than that. But, if you take, like, a flight to China, that would be, like, 15 hours, and then maybe back around. Whatever the actual total is, it's a lot faster than 80 days. And so that was kind of cool, and then I didn't realize that there was going to be the element of, there was this question about whether he had robbed a bank before he left, and so there were, like, police following him around to each country, and you kind of got to see how weird it was that they were, like, trying to get a warrant wired over to each of the countries. And they're just like, they have the suspect in sight, but we can't arrest him yet because we have to wait a few days for the warrant to come through. And I just thought it was, like, really interesting. So it was very cool. There was a lot of adventure and mystery. It was just an exciting, different book. So I enjoyed that. Next, I read The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, and I finished that March 27th. Gave that a 4-star rating on Goodreads, and I thought that was really cool because it was kind of ahead of its time. It was about a Martian invasion in England, and, like, how cool that that book was, like, talking all about the Martian invasion when it was originally published in 1898. It was just a really cool kind of, like, science fiction book, and some of it was, like, you can see obviously the differences between now and then and, like, technology wise, but overall it kind of was very ahead of its time, and so I thought it was, like, an interesting story, and definitely, still kind of stood well today. So I really enjoyed that, and kind of, like, the historical perspective on what they thought might be a Martian invasion back then. And then the last book that I have finished this year was Nantucket Blue by Layla Howland, and I finished that March 30th. Don't judge me, I'm midway through other books, but I have not finished them yet. And I read that when I was on spring break, and it was just such a nice, like, beach read. It takes place in Nantucket. I gave it a 5-star rating, and I made Megan read it, and she just finished it, and she enjoyed it. And it was just a really nice kind of summer contemporary book, and it was about life on Nantucket, and it's about, like, a best friend and her relationship with the main character's relationship with the best friend when something terrible happens to the best friend, and she kind of goes to Nantucket to spend the summer with her, but then her best friend is kind of pushing her off, and there's, like, a romance that goes on. So it was a good book, and I enjoyed it, and I bought the second one to read the sequel, Nantucket Red, so that will be coming up on my TBR. And that is all for the books that I have been reading. We have officially wrapped up and tied it with a little bow. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and let me know if you have different thoughts, same thoughts on any of the books that I have read. And if you have any questions on any of them, let me know. So I will see you guys next time. Bye!